Hi guys, it's Janae and welcome back to my channel, and today I'm finally returning to the read-along for Moldu, otherwise known as Silent Reading, and I'm so excited. We're gonna be doing just a very short read-along for Moldu that's, I think, if all goes well, should literally just be this week because I so badly wanted to finish up volume 2 of Moldu before we go anywhere else with anything else. But yeah, so that is the plan. We have about 10 pages, 10 chapters left, if I'm not mistaken. And then what's good is I noticed that the website that I usually use for the Modu read along specifically has the option of like downloading it into a PDF format, which is good because then it means when we do get back to it eventually, I'm going to be able to kind of track which page we're on, so it's going to be easier to work out, how many pages we need to be doing and everything like that. Hi! So yeah, so I'm not sure what we're going to be doing after this week of Modu, but we'll worry about that later. I'm just excited to be back with Modu for at least a little while because I've really missed it. Um, Hi, yes, we are back for a very brief intermission of Modu before we go back to, I think, where we might finish up Scumvillain after this. Hi. So that is, today we're gonna aim for at least 4 chapters, but hopefully 5. It will depend on how quickly I can read, because I feel as if I always underestimate how long Modu's chapters take, and I'm like tripping over my words, which is not a good start. Okay, so let me just quickly, I have my tea here. We're gonna be taking a break at the hour mark, just 10 minutes. And everything else I think you guys should be familiar with, hopefully. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. But also just quickly, not that I know if it's relevant to anyone who's live right now, here on the live right now, but just a heads up, if anyone is part of memberships and was struggling with Mysterious Lotus Casebooks link, it has now been fixed. It should now be working. So just in case anyone here, if it's applicable to anyone. Okay, I think we can get started because we are running a little late. Sorry about that. Okay, I just quickly need to. This is now again a learning curve. I feel like every time we get back to this, I just have to relearn everything from scratch because it's so different from the normal having an actual book to reference. Okay, I just want to be able to actually view the chat while we're reading. So let me quickly grab that. Oh goodness, no, don't do that. Sorry guys. Okay, we'll just make that work. So let's get started. Now I have to re-scroll to where we were because it always does this to me. Let's see. Okay. As far as I remember, we left off at the end of chapter 50. So we ended off with Fadu smiled at her. The assistant had been with him for several years and could identify the meaning of each of this playboy's smiles. She at once gave a shudder, feeling that this young master's tastes were becoming increasingly intense. Which sounds a little bit foreboding, not gonna lie. Okay, Chapter 51, Humbert. 18, I think. The assistant's expression looked like she had something to say, but was holding back. Fedu only glanced at her and knew what she wanted to say. Very understandingly, he said, "If there are documents that need my signature, leave them on my desk. If any of them are urgent, I'll come back to the office in the evening. There are also some letters from business partners that may need your personal attention." The assistant quickly added, "What time would it be suitable for me to come pick you up in the evening?" No time would be suitable. Fedu opened the car door, laughed at the words. "I'll call a car for myself. If I delay your date with your boyfriend after work, you may not like me anymore. What will I do then?" Are you speaking from experience, Fedu? The assistant very generously said, "That boyfriend of mine, he has no money and no looks. I don't know what I keep him around for myself. Just give the order and I'll kick him to the curb at once." Oh, damn, that's ruthless. I see why she's Fedu's assistant. "Take pity on the poor man kneeling at your feet. Also, your makeup is so lovely today. How can you only show it to me and the computer? It's a reckless waste of the bounty of nature." Yeah, that says bounty, not beauty. Okay. Without consulting anyone, Fedu got out the car. Before leaving, he put a hand on the car door and leaned down to exhort her. "This car can be a little tricky. Drive slower on the way back. Send me a message when you get back to the office." Why does that feel creepy? Like, why is he suddenly saying that to her? Um, at his words, the assistant subconsciously checked her makeup in the rearview mirror, found that her lip color had faded, and when Fedu had left, hastily went over it with her lipstick a few times. Then she couldn't resist in raising her head to look at Fedu. Fedu's back often had a distinctive swagger, seen from behind. His arms, hoisted up because of its cast, hardly looked any different from his usual posture holding a glass of champagne. Looking like he was attending a dinner party, he made his leisurely, carefree way to the city bureau. I just love that, like that description, and again, I just can so clearly picture it from the live action because they cast him so well and the actor did such a good job. The system was surnamed Mao. Unlike the palace steward, secretaries specially assigned to trifles, she'd had a solemn education at an elite school and was an excellent worker. Because she'd once run afoul of a nasty individual, her hopes in the workplace had been soured. Fedu had given her a hand. Young President Fei was a famous ladies' man, casually teasing any young lady he met, seemingly familiar with everyone. But in fact, only those under his personal direction knew what he did every day. Fedu always worked by the book. He rarely rejected the senior management team's proposals, understanding very well the sense of letting experts handle business that required expert knowledge, while in some other matters the qualities of a son of wealth were unusually apparent. Perhaps because he had been spoiled by growing up amidst luxury, he couldn't work up any greed in his bones. He gave up whatever immaterial benefits he could, making his relations with the small shareholders very harmonious. He was more than up to the task of socializing. He was a successor who caused no trouble to anyone, except that Assistant Mao had seen with her own eyes how he'd snatched up control over the conglomerate back then. Ooh, that feels very foreboding. Just side note, getting back to Mordu is just also, making me more excited for the new Priest adaptation that I just watched. Like, you can tell it's very much Priest, and I'm so excited to see how it goes. Um, okay, anyway, sorry, where were we? But the strange thing was, as far as Assistant Mao could see, Their son of the house didn't have the disposition of a pioneering leader. He had no wild ambitions of stepping on Asia Pacific and dominating the whole globe. As long as he had money when he wanted to spend money, he seemed to have no other views. The strong momentum at the start of his succession seemed to have been just for the sake of making his presence felt and showing others not to try and fool him. After becoming thoroughly acquainted with all the conglomerate workings, he hadn't put his hand in too much. This last half year, he has been especially scarce, disappearing more and more often without anyone knowing what he was doing, seemingly intent on being a hands-off leader. It sounded like a young person who lacked focus and hadn't decided yet what he wanted to pursue. But Assistant Mao thought that Feidu's mind was very deep. He wouldn't have this type of blowing hot and cold, starting fine and ending poorly style. Thinking it over without being able to reach an answer, she looked towards the city bureau, feeling that the public security bureau's gates were bustling. Then, way down, she drove away. Oh, I haven't checked the new adaptation yet, but it does sound interesting. I mean, I've only watched the first episode and done the reaction for that, but so far, I'm very intrigued. It could go bad, but I'm like putting my trust in Priest. Um, mm, the gates of Yan City's city bureau truly was exceedingly bustling. Every place, whether legal or illegal, was parked full of cars. A little traffic cop held up a parking ticket, not knowing whether it would or wouldn't be proper to stick it on, looking blankly all around. Several officers on duty had been sent to the reception room to take responsibility for signing people in. There was so much sorry, there were so many callers, it would soon surpass the utter confusion of a lowly local police station. Fady followed a crowd of people just heading in. Without saying a word, he somehow mixed in with them. Looking on, he found that the span of ages and positions among the people who had come was great. They came from all walks of life, wearing all kinds of clothes. There were grey-faced middle-aged people, as well as old people with their faces ruined by hardship. Some people carried photographs with them, some seemed to be husband and wife. They seemed to stick closer together than ordinary husbands and wives, frequently holding hands or walking right next to each other, as if neither could easily walk alone, and they had to support each other in order to keep staggering on ahead. That's actually a beautiful description, like very sad, but just very vivid. Sorry about that. A sudden, uncontrolled sob would explode from time to time among the crowd. At these times, the dispirited expressions of the surrounding people would alter. But while they altered, aside from Feidu, who was a curious outsider, most of the others wouldn't turn their heads to search for the source of the crying, as they all had a tacit mutual understanding. Feidu frowned, faintly sensing something. He had reported time and again to the city bureau and was already familiar with it. While no one was watching him, he simply strolled into the corridors. He was considering whether to call when he bumped into Norman Joe at the door of the corner restroom. Yay, I'm so excited. Norman Joe's already distinct eyelids had acquired another crease from staying up all night. He smelled chokingly of cigarette smoke. He had just washed his face with cold water, and the water droplets covering his head and face, were rolling down his neck. There was a wet patch on the front of his t-shirt, leaving an unobstructed view. An unobstructed view, you say, Feidu? Mm-hmm. Feidu's gaze unobtrusively travelled up and down between his chest and waistline, as if his naked eyes could have acted as cameras. Presumably, he'd have taken a dozen close-ups at that moment. Not Priest calling Feidu out like that, oh my goodness. He's thirsty as all hell, and so am I, so just give me a second. When he'd seen enough, Fedu pushed up his sunglasses and, like a proper gentleman, made his opening remarks. What, do the ones you dug up yesterday from the West Wing case have a record? In matters of major crimes, no one's reactions were faster than Faye's. Lowenjo didn't have any strength to be surprised. He nodded very wearily. What a large scale. Hands behind his back, Fedu looked out the window and said, on such occasions, the ones that come are usually the father and mother. I see there are quite a range of ages among these parents. How many years back are you digging? 22 years. When he spoke, Lowenjo felt his voice was rather hoarse. He cleared his throat. Gofei was taken from Lotus Mountain 20 years ago, but the same kind of victim in the same kind of case appears 2 years before. From Wu Guangcheng's death to the present, it hasn't stopped. Feidu got a package of breath mints out of his pocket and passed it to him. Our initial conjecture is that it is a gang, Lowenjo sighed. Each year there's a myriad of missing children who go missing in all kinds of ways, and most of them aren't found. We can only rely on gathering blood samples and DNA, then try our luck. When suspicious child beggars are reported or we arrest a human trafficking gang, there's not a trace of these kids, dead or alive. It's hard to delimit the circumstances. Generally, the frontline officers are responsible for putting the investigation on record, and by the time it gets to us here, it's only an end of the report coming from below. We only look to see the data is within normal bounds. No one would take too much notice. That's a really sad. Oh my goodness. I miss the shameless brat actually. Me too. Me too, very much so. But the old criminal policeman who worked the Lotus Mountain case must still have been in office these past few years. If there had been one or two among them who couldn't let go of the case, like you, Shifu, like your Shifu, they would have discovered a problem long ago. Unless these later cases were missing a crucial detail, like the dress. That was my conjecture. Feidu's response was so quick it was a little scary. It's the follow-up tormenting of the parents, right? Lowenjo didn't speak. He crushed a breath mint between his teeth. Supposing there is such a gang, using harmless little girls to approach their targets, carrying these girls off with no one the wiser, I think they wouldn't be willing to attract people's attention, said Feidu. The conduct of making harassing phone calls to the victims' homes is too personal. It's not the interests of the organization. What the organization wants is little girls around 10 years old, but what the caller wants is to torment girls as parents. It sounds like a debate getting out of control. Ooh, that's an interesting way to look at it. Su Shaolan 20 years back, Su Laojian 20 years later. Why does everyone have things and I'm the only one who doesn't? Parents, a home, all the things I don't have. I'll destroy them all. The call Guoheng had received had come from a waste transfer station in the middle of nowhere. The only road that led there had been a toll station. After repeated investigation, it was obvious that the person who'd made the call hadn't gone through the toll station, but had detoured by the national road. Somebody stopped the car by the side of the road, then climbed down a large slope carrying the kidnapped Gofei to make a phone call. That's intense as well. That kind of implies a physical fitness and strength that not everyone necessarily possesses. I mean, hell, I can barely lift my dog up anymore. And she's still technically a puppy. Um, this business had a good deal of illogical points to it. It was a far-fetched guess Gohang had come up with after eliminating the impossible, so the police investigating the Lotus Mountain case at the time hadn't accepted it. The girl on the phone hadn't spoken, only screamed. The sound of the bells and the pencil box had made Gorfei's family think, as a matter of course, that the screams had belonged to Gorfei. But what if the girl on the phone hadn't been Gorfei at all? Ooh, that's interesting. If Gorfei had already been murdered then, and the killer taking along his diminutive accomplice had driven into the middle of nowhere to find a place to dispose of the body, and during this time the girl had suddenly been unable to endure the pressure in her heart and had burst out running out of the killer's car. Well, that's a lot of speculation, but okay. Lowenjaw gently closed his eyes, imagining what had been in the twisted little accomplice's heart then. Fear, disgust, disbelief? Or had she been filled with a twisted jealousy and hatred? He found it was beyond his capacity to imagine. He was like many people who'd grown up in a peaceful age. If you asked them out of nowhere to imagine what they would do if the flames of war suddenly burned up their doors, what would come into the minds of the vast majority of them would be collect my jewelry and valuables, think of how to get to my friends and family, think of how to maintain the necessities of life as I flee from calamity and other such wilderness survival challenges lifetimes. Let's not say what my first thought was, but okay. As an adult of ordinary intelligence, though Lowenjaw had countless times deduced all kinds of criminal motives, he could only guess some terms floating around on the paper to conjecture at the girl's state of mind then. Why hadn't the same thing happened in the last 20 years? In the end, what was the link between the deformed mother-daughter pair of Su Shaolan then and Su Luozhang now? Can you sneakily get me in to talk to Su Shaolan? Sorry, Su Luozhang. Damn it, sorry. Asked Feidu. Yes, this is what I've been wanting. Lowenjo came back to himself and thought, isn't that nonsense? He was planning to flatly refuse, looked up, and saw Feidu leaning on the wall of the corridor opposite him, eyes lightly focused on him. He very rarely noticed Feidu's eyes. I totally believe you. And in his impression, all the looks Feidu gave him were mocking, cold, satirical, each raised eyelash shouting in chorus, look at you, looking at you is displeasing. Not anymore. Never before had his look been this peaceful and harmless, accompanied by that sneakily Feidu had just spoken. Lo and Joy imagined he tasted a trace of softness. He went still. The nonsense, what are you joking about? He'd been about to blurt out, not leaving his mouth. Such is the inherent weakness of a man. Sure, tell us more about it. I just also want to check that everything is still fine with the chat. Lowenjo internally lamented, but his tone involuntarily softened a great deal. I'm afraid that won't work. It's against regulation. Didn't you let me listen in on an investigation last time? Our leader specifically authorized it. Then have him authorize it again. I've already talked directly to Su Luozhan anyway. Feidu displayed his habitual, somewhat irreverent, not quite smile. And moreover, I've written a little article concerning studies of victims which, fortunately, happened to be read by a certain teacher some little time ago and collected in the third edition of an academic text on a related topic. Oh, on that note, this April I was enrolled into Yam Security Uni's Applied Psychology Postgraduate Program. Come September, I'll be halfway to being an insider in your system. Captain Law, how about you call and ask that very quick and able leader from last time? Wow. Like he already knew what the answer was gonna be before he started asking Lo and Jo these questions. Lo and Jo, dot dot dot. What the hell had, sorry, when the hell had all this happened? Well, you were looking the other way he grew up, okay? Let's just go with that. Lorenzo, no, that's nonsense. You can't do that. Sees, figures, pretty eyes. Yeah, okay. Regulations don't matter. Go ahead. Yes, indeed, indeed. But that is that. Oopsie. That is what we want. From someone who is on their way to being besotted. Chapter 52. Humbert. 19. Even if Edu had lost his mind, gone drag racing downtown, and been personally hauled back to a little dark room by Lo and Jo, that still would have sounded more normal than what he just said. Lo and Jo's temples throbbed incessantly. His overloaded CPU just cooled down a little, once again showed signs of bursting into flames. Enrolled in April, however rich and overbearing, Fedu was whatever doors were open to him. He still must have started preparing for this last year. Why? Had he suddenly woken up enthralled by academia? Did he have an acute case of nothing best to do? The way he said that though, oh my word. Was it to pursue Tauran? Or had he suddenly found that he'd grown weary of his world filled with the stench of profits? Just then, perhaps because it was rather crowded downstairs, the photograph was accidentally knocked out of the hand of a middle-aged woman. She hastily reached out to grab it, but a wind blew past, tumbling the old photo paper away. This was clearly an insignificant little accident, but the person was sufficiently sensitive, weakened nerves. It seemed like a mystical hint of something. Okay, sorry, that sentence did not come out well. Let me try that again. This was clearly an insignificant little accident, but to a person with insufficient why did I say with sufficiently sensitive, weakened nerves, it seemed like a mystical hint of something. The woman collapsed, stumbling to her knees, and began to bawl. The sound of crying, hoarse but rising with penetrating force, pierced through the cracks in the corridor's window. Meanwhile, amidst this unsettling clamor, a technician from the forensics department trotted over. Captain Law, the analysis results have come in on the specimen you delivered yesterday. The blood on the cloth is Truton's. Okay, let me just grab this. Wondro took a deep breath, looked at Fedu for a while, then wordlessly went towards Director Liu's office. 20 minutes later, Fedu, holding 2 cartons of ice cream, walked into a room temporarily being used to hold Su Luozhan. He put the cartons on a little table. Do you want some? Which one? Su Luozhan looked at him, hesitating a moment, then pointed to the strawberry one. Fedu left her the strawberry, taking the other carton himself. He got his earbuds and phone out of his pocket, opened a live stream of a basketball game, crossed his legs, and watched while he ate, ignoring her. The two sat in mutual silence for a while. At first, Su Luozhan was calm, not making any eye contact with him. When she'd eaten half the ice cream and found the other party showed no signs of speaking, she finally couldn't resist giving Fedu a look on her own initiative. Her gaze swept over Fedu's shirt and phone, finally falling on his wrist laying on the table. Her head tilted. Su Luozhan considered his watch for a moment, then gently tapped the floor twice with the tip of her foot. Is your watch real? That's an interesting question. Fedu may not have heard. He made no response. Su Luozhan waited a while, then reached a finger across the table and lightly tapped twice on the side of his phone. Finally alert, Fedor pulled out his earbuds. Yes, what is it? The volume on his phone was very loud. In the quiet room you could hear the shouting of the commentator leaking out of the earbud. Sulujan bit a corner of her plastic spoon. What are you doing here? Aren't you going to question me? Oh, my colleagues are busy. They made me come over to keep an eye on you. Freddy seemed unwilling to tear himself away from the screen. He spared her only a second's glance before turning back to the game, answering very absently. When the other asked her this and that, the girl would play the fool. But when others weren't interested in her, she seemed to feel dissatisfied. That makes a lot of sense. At first, Shulozhan looked at Fedru from time to time. When she finished her ice cream, she simply stared at him, momentarily opening a conversation. Are you also with the police? A trainee, Fedru answered indolently. Are trainees very rich? Shulozhan raised her brows in a very adult fashion. Your watch looks pretty expensive. Is that the real deal or a quality fake? That's a lot for someone of her age to have an eye for. That tells you a little something about what she was surrounded with. Fedor seemed to think her words were very funny. First he raised his brows in astonishment. Then he spoke, unable to hold back a smile. You know what a quality fake is? Little girl, who taught you that? Sulozhan's expression hardened at once, clearly affronted by his disrespectful attitude of teasing a small child. She remembered this man was the wounded left arm. At the old Sioux residence, he'd also treated her like this. It seemed like he didn't believe that she could do anything, and didn't believe she could pose any threat either. Finding you'd successfully practiced a deception would generally cause satisfaction. But this satisfaction couldn't endure because in acting the swine to eat the tiger, the important point was generally to eat the tiger. There was no there was no pleasure in always acting the swine, especially when people treated you like one. I love that he narrowed in on her pride because she clearly has some, um, and hopefully it'll become an easy weakness. Um, Sultan bit her lip, carefully assessing whether he really wasn't interested in her or whether he was only putting it on. After a while, she couldn't resist half seriously throwing out some bait. She answered, Those uncles taught me. Fairy paused, but he didn't ask you which uncles. He only very pityingly, with some placating perfunctoriness, said to her, It'll be all right now, rest assured. This manner made Su Luojan feel like she'd put a wrong foot going downstairs. She couldn't resist following up. You mean I'll be all right? I mean there won't be any more bad guys hurting you. As for the question of how to deal with you now, we'll have to see. Although the problem isn't serious and you're still young, you won't have to bear a criminal responsibility. I would guess you'll be taken into care. Pedro thought about it, then finally paused his damn basketball game, seeming to remember his police duties. He opened his beautiful peach blossom eyes wide, but out of his mouth came a string of cliches addressed to the little girl. Sorry, to the girl I added in that little. You children have no self-awareness. You get used by people and don't know what's happened. Child, the past is the past. When you get out, you have to study hard, not think of these messy things anymore. The road ahead of you is still long. Taran had taken advantage of their mutual delay to take a nap in front of the surveillance feed. He'd just woken up when he heard this string and hastily rubbed his eyes. Heavens, that's Feidu. With a long with with this long-windedness, I thought you were possessing him. Rowan Joe kicked his chair. Oh my word, not Taran just like roasting him. What? Taran used this opportunity to stand up and clear his head. He rubbed his face and bent an ear, what? An ear to the interminable harangue grew on the surveillance feed for a moment. Those two words did not want to work for me. Then he smiled. Recently, you two haven't been arguing. It's pretty good. What is there to argue about? I mean, you found things before, so who knows? Taran laughed. Didn't your fur bristle at the sight of each other at the Flower Market District Sub-Bureau's gates? Didn't you fight it out all the way back? And you had them give him a parking ticket. Lo and Jaw, ... I told you all along, Taran sighed. As before, habitually playing peacemaker, Feidu's really all right. If you're a little nice to him, he'll quietly pay it back to you tenfold. He may run off at the mouth sometimes, but he'll rarely haggle over anything for real. Otherwise, he wouldn't have let it go so easily when the sports car of his got smashed up. Having spoken, Taran prepared for Lowenjo to respond with a sneer, but instead, after a while, Lowenjo hadn't said anything. He even gave a brief, yeah. Taran, ... There's a lot of ... dotting today. What had been happening on Earth lately? How come every time he opened his eyes it was a different world? Just then, on the surveillance feed, Sulujan abruptly stood up and pressed forward, almost sitting on the little table, using her body language to interrupt Feidu's ideological education. Do you think they just used me? Sulujan asked quietly. Chuan Chao has been arrested and brought to justice, Feidu said sternly. Although there are still questions that haven't been settled, we should soon be able to get it out of him. Sulujan laughed mysteriously. If you're willing to identify him, then, of course. At this point, Feidu deliberately paused, then shook his head and smiled. Never mind. What would be the use of you identifying him? Do you want to eat something else? I can send someone to buy it. Sulujan wasn't interested in this. She followed up. Why would it be no use for me to identify him? Because you're a child, Feidu said matter-of-factly. Children can't bear witness. This is a case of a very serious nature. They wouldn't take what you say as the truth. And if they did, they still couldn't make you go to court. But, little girl, there's one point I have to talk to you about. However scared you are, hurting other children is still wrong. You were holding a knife back there. You know how dangerous that was? If you'd slipped up. Sorry, I can just imagine him like being super patronizing on purpose. Sulujan suddenly interrupted him. If I'd slipped up, I wouldn't have been able to kill her. Feidu looked at her, seemingly dazed. Sulujan twirled the hair at her temple around her finger again and again, looking at him with a smile that wasn't quite a smile. She was like a hunter who'd thrown out some bait and was waiting for the prey to take it. Feidu became solemn, putting down his phone and sitting up properly, looking at Sulujan. I know that for some children who have been hurt, it can be hard to accept themselves as victims. You may mistakenly think that only the bad guys are strong, only the bad guys are capable, and victims are all weak and stupid and deserve what they get. You may even blindly emulate those people who do bad things, but victims are weak and stupid and deserve what they get. Sulujan pulled a face at him. Please let someone not take that out of context. Sulujan pulled a face at him. They're like sheep. All they can do is bleat, slow and foolish, easily tricked, scream at a touch, and die just like that. They're of no value alive. Feidu furrowed his brow, staring at Sulujan in mixed shock and anger. How could you think that? From the time he'd taken her for a stupid child and tried to educate her, there had been a vicious restlessness in Sulujan's heart. She'd have loved nothing better than to rip open his gentle face. Seeing his expression change now, the restlessness was at least slightly alleviated, and she felt a bit of indiscernible, unwarranted pleasure. Anyway, I wouldn't be sentenced to jail no matter what, right? Sulujan looked at Feidu complacently. Those sheep really are very foolish. They believe anything you say. If you get near them once, the second time they'll think that you're their friend and go with you anywhere you want. Huh. It's so funny, it kills me. I mean, the good thing here is, as far as I'm aware, and maybe um there's an exception to this, but as far as I'm aware, you're not allowed to lie to a suspect if you're a police officer. But he's not a police officer, so technically he can like talk circles around her, and whatever information she gives up is like not his responsibility, but they can still use it. Using that as a tool will never not be impressive and a pleasure to witness. Fully agree, and this was what I was hoping for when we had episode 7 and 8 of the show, and obviously we didn't get past that point, but I'm so happy that in the novel they did have this happen where he is kind of the interrogating party. Mm. Sulujan, Feidu's lips trembled faintly. Don't talk nonsense. Sulujan hadn't had a chance to see Chutong's parents' expressions when they'd received the recording. It was all imagination. She'd felt an unbearable itch, and grafted now grafted this young policeman's pain and disturbed expression onto the vision. She was so excited her eyes glowed. I'm not talking nonsense. She innocently and artlessly kicked the floor, gently with the tip of her foot. That is what my mom taught me. She said that when other animals encounter danger, they'll either fight or flee. Only little sheep are different. They'll only get scared out of their wits, stay where they are without moving a muscle. They'll go with whoever calls them. Though my mom was also a sheep, also very foolish, I read her diary in secret. She got scared out of her wits when she was the same age as me, and afterwards she never dared to leave her signature again. Signature? Said Feidu. Sulujan very cleverly mimicked a telephone receiver with her hand and put it next to her ear. The knight protecting her died, so she didn't dare any more. Knight? Too sickening, right? Sulujan laughed scornfully. In fact, he was just a diner. She was on good terms with, that's all. My family lives by hunting. Aside from catching little sheep, my mom couldn't do anything. Then she got old and couldn't even tend to business. She had to rely on me to support herself. Well, she finally died. That's enough. Don't say any more. Feidu said with difficulty. How old are you? I knew how to do it when I was 7. I'm gonna be sick. We get both him and Lowendrel being badass at interrogations, truly a power couple. These are my kind of preferred power couples. I really enjoy it. Okay. Sulujan happily pursed her lips in a smile at him. My mom used me to catch little sheep to entertain the clients. Sometimes she'd have to have me go hunting with a client. When he'd finished his meal, he'd go back home, and she'd take care of the rest. No need for the client to worry about it. That's the business she learned from her mother. Oh, damn. So this has been very much a generational thing. That's very, very grim. In front of the surveillance feed, Lowenjo stood up to investigate Su Shaolan's drunkard mom. Hearing this order, Lang Chao, who'd just come in, ran back out without a look back. All the drowsiness in Taoran's body vanished without a trace. What does this mean? Is the child saying that Su Shaolan's mother made her living pumping underage prostitutes and Wu Guangcheng was only her client? Also, why is it that she didn't say a word when we questioned her, but Faye didn't even ask, and she insisted on saying it herself because she doesn't like feeling as if Faye do thinks she's stupid. Whereas if she stays silent when your guys are begging her for answers, she is superior. She has the upper hand. You treated her as a suspect, acting like the police, Lowenjo said quietly, gaze fixed on the screen. Feidu treated her as an innocent child, acting like a parent, so she subconsciously wanted to send him a recording. The reason only Feidu had been able to get her to talk was that he had a wealth of experience being a troubled young person. It was that only Feidu had used the proper manner when capturing Su Luojan. Impossible. Feidu stood up at once, accidentally bumping the little table. It gave a thunk and heavily settled back on the floor. The killer then was Wu Guangcheng, and Wu Guangcheng was stabbed to death by the victim's family member. Afterwards, there weren't any more. At this point, he abruptly paused, suddenly opening his eyes wide as if he thought of something frightening. You didn't know about it, that's all. Suluojan was enjoying his expression. Though that uncle really had nothing to complain about. My mom loved him, but he was a great scum. He wasn't satisfied just having my mom. He also liked the stupid sheep. She was so jealous she was about to go mad. So she invented a fun sort of signature. Do you have some do you have the same kind of relationship with Xu Chao? Said Feidu. No way! Su Luojan cried out in displeasure. Scornfully she said, What is he? Is he worthy? He's a part-time janitor at best. Feidu suddenly raised his voice. Then why did you want to send the recording to Trutong's parents? Su Luojan smiled cheekily with her arms pressed to her sides. It was fun, she said. Boss, Su Shaolan's mother was called Su Hui. She worked a little when she was young, then the place she worked at closed down. She was unemployed, stayed home, and developed an alcohol addiction. She operated a gaming hall that had a second-hand truck. Oh, okay. That is intense, but we are at the start of a new chapter, and we're at 7:02, so I think I'm gonna take the 10-minute break now instead of when it's on the hour, just because it'll be a bit easier. Yeah, this novel doesn't play around with cases. They were seriously messed up, but also really interesting. So that, yeah. Yeah, no, it's rough. I just kind of like put it out of my mind where we were at. But we're back at it again. So yeah, I will see you guys again at 3 past the hour, if that's okay. Okay, we're back. Pull everything up again. Hi. Okay, so thank you, James, for answering. And yeah, I just quickly went to get something new to drink and also make my mom tea and just pat my dog. She was sleeping very soundly and looking very cute. And that just fully distracted me. Anyway, okay, let's see if we can get through at least two more chapters now. Chapter 53, Humbug Humbug 20. The gaming hall was torn down and rebuilt again and again. It became a commercial building long ago. If the bodies had really been hidden there, it's impossible that they wouldn't have been turned up when the building was leveled and rebuilt all those times. As for the rest, it's really been too long, and the records from back then are incomplete. We won't be able to find anything else within a short time. Through the surveillance camera, Lang Chao looked at Su Lezhan, who had her chin propped in both hands. She felt a shiver of disgust. And is what this little person says credible or not? Yeah, no, she is doing amazingly. She's growing at a rapid pace. We can only use it as a reference. I can see this child rather likes to show off. Lo and Joe's unblinking gaze fixed on the surveillance feed. After muttering to himself for a moment, he said, "But the method of the crime has been basically cleared up. The adult and the girl collaborate. First, they'll follow the target, then, at a suitable moment, the adult would appear and do something to frighten the victim. Next, the girl would appear, gain the victim's trust under those circumstances, and after one or two contacts, trick the victim into coming with her." That is so grim, but it's actually so smart. The day I moved in, Chen Chen really was being followed. Taran thought about it, then said, "If the stalker Fei noticed then was the accomplice, suppose he was suspect A." Lorenzo pulled out a sheet of A4 paper and drew a circle around the letter. For the time being, we'll say that that man who abducted Chutong and drove the car at the West Ridge was B. We can't be certain for the moment whether A and B are the same person, but I'm personally inclined towards thinking they aren't. That is interesting. Why? Asked Lang Chao. Frequency of offenses. Lowenjo tapped the table with his pen cap. If suspect A was following Chen Chen from the time Taran moved all the way through to last night, then it's already been over a month. Let's not consider whether A would have the energy to simultaneously stalk two girls who moved around in completely different places. Even if he could do it, for a person who had the patience to stalk a victim for a month, offending twice in the space of 5 days is too intensive. Then there's a third person in this case, Shuren Chao. He has a definite alibi for the night Chutong was taken, so we know he can't be B. But what role did he play in this? Wenjo wrote down the character Shu, then the character Su, and drew a line between them. After Su Luozhan dragged Chen Chen and tied her up at the old Su family residence, she went home like she had nothing else to do. She wasn't afraid that Chen Chen would run, or that she would move around and be heard, because she knew her accomplice was coming to the old Su residence to take over. But then uh, Shu and Chao was detained by you guys, which messed up her planning. Is that not what happened? Um, Terrifying stuff like that is perfectly foul. perfect fuel for paranoia. Very much is, especially because it's not very far off what happens in reality. Um, but the accomplice didn't come. Sulujan was alerted by the call from the children's palace teacher, then ran to the old Su residence to determine in person whether Chen had been taken away. Then she called Shu and Chao twice. Lo and Zhou thickened the line between Shu and Chao and Su Shaolan, then drew downward, splitting the line into two branches. Zhang Yuchen was a thick um, was scared stiff last night. We won't rely on her testimony for the moment. Judging from the rest of our information, there are two possibilities here. First, Shu Wenchao was suspect A who stopped Chen Chen attempting to abduct her. The Wenzel paused. Second, Shu Wenchao is Su Laozhan's proxy. Su Shaolan was sick for a long time, and there was some things Su Laozhan couldn't accomplish on her own. She needed a grown-up. The first time Shu Wenchao was summoned by the police, he had been very surprised because he had no idea of where he'd slipped up. He'd answered all their questions very carefully, preferring to make himself appear a bit slow. At the time, it was likely he hadn't yet known about Su Lezhan sending the recording to Zhong's parents, and he hadn't expected the police to link the case with the one 20 years earlier. This is all very convoluted. I'm trying my best to keep up. Like, it makes sense, but my brain is not the sharpest. But Taran had inadvertently alerted him during their talk. It was likely that Shu Wenchao had determined what Su Shaolan had done based on this questioning. From the time the police had started following him to the time he'd received Su Luozhan's phone calls, he had made his preparations to be taken into custody and prepared his excuses. What you mean is, Taran said, involuntarily lowering his voice. Like that girl said just now, Shu Wenchao is a part-time janitor. Part-time janitor? That can't mean what I think it means. Wang Chao twisted her head to look at Lo and Zhou. He takes care of... What about Chutong? Is there really no hope? Yeah, and also, isn't the silent reading program that they always listen to called Janitor or the stories that's submitted is always done by Janitor something or other, so obviously that must be linked. I mean, we kind of knew it was, but this feels like confirmation. Don't worry, it all makes sense in retrospect. Yep, it's not easy to follow first time around, or even second time sometimes. Was I? Charles twisted her head to look at Lo and Zhou. He takes care of... What about Chitong? Is there really no hope? Last night, when Su Luzhan tied Chen Chen up at the old Su residence, Shu and Chao should have taken over, but Shu and Chao had been summoned by us to cooperate with the investigation and couldn't go. Lo and Zhou ignored her question, not even lifting an eyelid. There was a large quantity of blood found on the strips of cloth in the music box in Su Luzhan's bedroom, but the medical examiners performed a luminal test at the old Su residence without finding a trace of blood. That is, it's likely the old Su residence is only a temporary transfer station and the real crime scene isn't there. That makes sense, unfortunately. Then where is the real crime scene? Said Taran. Wait a minute. No, you guys, wait. In a flurry, Lang Chao pulled out a page from a stack of materials. Haven't you made a mistake somewhere? Over 20 years ago, Shu Wenchao attended a shatteringly expensive private school. When he grew up, he could afford photographic equipment and became a freelance photographer. He has a house, a car, and no debts. He's really pretty wealthy. This may be unsuitable to say, but as long as you have money, you can go through certain channels to get what you want. Does he have any reason to work with Su Luojan to do these weird things? He's not short on money either. What benefit can there be for him? These words silenced everyone. True. Why would a man who'd grown up in middle class or even somewhat better off or in even somewhat better off surroundings, with both parents living and a childhood that could be called smooth sailing, get mixed up with the Su family? Probably there's blackmail somewhere. If not for Suluojan imitating Su Shaolan's signature for fun and leaving the recording at Chu Tong's house, as well as his own revealing slip-ups the 2 times he'd come, who would have thought that there was anything wrong with him? Captain Law. Just then, a criminal policeman stuck his head in. That old uncle surnamed Guo, who came before the rest, is asking for you. Oh, this is not good. Yes. Hi, sorry, didn't see you earlier. Janitor in GITD, reciter in the books. Okay, so maybe not necessarily linked. But then the Lolita thing still makes me side-eye. Um, where am I? Groham was waiting outside the noisy reception room. Someone, taking pity on him, had brought him a chair, just facing the duty room's back door. The officer on duty had run off to do something urgently, not taking the time to turn off the television. On the somewhat shabby screen, a local station was reporting on last night's sensational rescue operation at the Children's Palace. Bohan had his head stretched that sounds weird, had his head stretched out, all his attention focused on the screen. Subconsciously straightening, he stooped back, arranging himself in an upright and proper sitting posture. When the prisoners in jail were collectively organized to watch TV for news, broadcasts, or ideological education, the discipline was strict. They were required to use the standard posture to watch. A prison term of 20 years had turned a man in his prime into an old man who couldn't even relax freely on his sofa. That's weirdly grim. Like, that's a very unique detail. Lowenjo called to him gently, Uncle Guo. Guo Heng subconsciously straightened his back, seeming ready for an inspection. Then he came to himself, and the corners of his eyes drooped in desolation. The wrinkles that had been pulled taut manifested, row after row. Guo Heng sighed and quietly said, I'm holding up your work, but seeing so many people come, I've been worried. When I killed Wu Guangchun, could I have killed the wrong person? After a moment's hesitation, Luanzhou took 2 cigarettes from his pocket, lit them, and passed one to Guo Heng. Do you remember the girl you saved back then? I remember. Guo Heng nodded at once. Rather than looked a little older than Fei Fei, very pretty little girl. Now what was she called? Su Shaolan. So now I'm wondering, but this is me speculating based on very bad memory of what was described about the scene where he came upon Su Shaolan and Wu Guangchun. Yeah, whatever that guy's name is. What I'm wondering is if she got scared that her operation would be found out, and decided to frame the guy for it. because it's obviously more believable, more common to have a guy be the perpetrator and the true predator. Um, so I'm wondering if she faked the sexual assault that he came upon in order to avoid suspicion on herself at that time. Not to say that he's probably not also a bit scummy, because, but I'm wondering if it, like, she wasn't as innocent as she appeared at that time. Um, where was I? Right, that was it. Gohan brought his cigarette to his mouth as if it were a treasure, took a deep drag, and held it in his mouth, swallowing it rather than letting it out. Perhaps this was another habit left over from prison. Ah, it's been so many years. I don't know what the child is doing now. When I just go out, I thought about going to see her, but later I thought she may be married with children. Who would want to remember miserable things like that? I'd better not go bother her. As he spoke, a bit of a smile appeared on Gohan's distressed and gloomy face. To be frank, these last 20 years, my conscience has been a little clearer because I thought if I'd been a coward then, that girl may have died. Some years in a prison cell in exchange for a life seems worthwhile when you think about it, doesn't it? That is so sad. Like, how do you explain to this man that he might have helped a murderer? Lord Joe's lips moved slightly. Looking at Gohung's profile, he simply didn't know where to start. Could you really tell him? Maybe you did kill the wrong person, and the girl you saved was the real killer. Then wouldn't this man's miserable half of a lifetime, his ramrod posture and cherished cigarettes become a preposterous joke? Officer Law, Wilhelm suddenly remembering, asked again, "You still haven't told me what's going on. Was Wu Guangchun the killer or not?" "Uncle Guo, I'd like you to remember something for me first." Luo Zhou put a hand on the back of his chair. "Look at me and think carefully. Back then, the day you stabbed Wu Guangchun, how did you find him?" Rohan stared, not understanding why he would ask this. "Wasn't it that boy? He paged you. He was a student at Shinshu Middle School named Shu Wenchao. He followed and investigated Wu Gongchuan with you. I know that. Do you still remember what Shu Wenchao said when he paged you?" With the cigarette in his mouth, Guo Hong frowned, recalling for a long time. I think I think he said he's taken her at the school. Right, those were his words. Very obscure, not mentioning any names. When I read that, my head exploded. I found a public telephone immediately and called him back. Maybe his dad was in on it because imagine you find out your dad is into these very dodgy things, but then you find the perfect person to frame for the kidnapping and the blaming of all those problems. And you're just a kid who knows that his entire life would go up in flames if his dad was discovered to be involved in things like that. You don't think that this other man might murder someone because of it? Might you not decide to frame them? I'm speculating way too much. Let's just calm down. Um, Lo and Zhao paused slightly. You called him back? And then what? Please tell me in detail. Then I asked him what had happened and went to the school gates to meet him. said Goham. The boy led me to Wubong Chun's house. Didn't I tell you what happened after that? Owen Joe narrowed his eyes slightly. So that means Shu Chao was waiting for your call. Where was he waiting? Near the school, said Goham. Jinshu's infrastructure was good. There was a new phone booth nearby. He usually always contacted me that way. How long did it take you to get there? Said Lorenzo. 5 or 6 minutes. First, Shu and Charles sent a message to your pager, then waited for your call. After getting in touch and understanding the situation, you spent 5 or 6 minutes getting to Shinshu Middle School to meet him, and only then you set out, right? All of this, start to finish, took about 10 minutes. Lowenjo waited for Guoheng to nod, then went on. You two saw Wu Guangchen. You sent Shu Wenchao away to find someone, and followed Wu Guangchen to his door. Is that right? How far was the place where you saw Wu Guangchen from his house? Not far at all, just around the corner, Wilhelm calculated. Somewhere over 50 meters, not more than 100. Wu Guangchen took Su Shilan from the school and went back to his house. I'm about to sneeze. Okay, apparently not. This is annoying. Okay. Wu Guangchen took Su Shilan from the school and went back to his house. He also left from near the school. With a 10-minute delay, how did you two get near Wu Guangchen's house ahead of him? The child took me by a shortcut, said Guoheng. That Wu Guangchen wouldn't have dared to go by the main road. He'd have gone by the back door. He'd have had to go around a big residential neighborhood, while the two of us went right through the neighborhood, basically in a straight line. All the residential estates had outer walls then, but they weren't very high. They had black tiled fretwork on top of them. Through the wall, I saw Wu Guangchen pulling that girl. I really was young back then. I sent the boy away and jumped over the wall to follow. Ah. So, some of the questions are answered pretty quickly, don't worry. Okay. Lord Joe got a small notebook out of his pocket. Could you draw out the positions you just described for me? Goheng hesitated a moment, then, thinking about it, he drew a sketch with many revisions and gave it to him. What is it? Why do you want this? What is going on? I don't know yet, Lowenjo said quietly. Uncle Gore, at this point in the investigation, it looks like something may be contrary to expectations. Will you be able to accept it? Leaning on the back of his chair, Goheng slowly stood up. We'll give you an accounting as soon as possible. Leaving these words behind, Lowenjo strode away. He gave the sketch Goheng had drawn to Tauran, waiting to one side. Can you find out what estate this used to be? Is it still there now? Taran looked the paper over several times. Wu Gongchen's house is long gone. When we first suspected that this case was connected to the one from 20 years ago, some colleagues went to investigate the crime scene from back then. Jinshu Middle School moved away long ago, and there was a gymnasium built where Wu Gongchen's house was. Though the estate seems to be... I'm going to the scene to have a look. Feidu slowly came over. Lowenjo knew it was him without needing to turn his head, because all of Yan City's city bureau was madly busy. The people coming and going all moved at a march or a trot, and only his footsteps sounded unhurried as always. Feidu wiped the lenses on his clothing, and once again perched his glasses on his nose. His whole air changed at once, transforming from a deeply emotional young man into a beast in human garb. I love that description, Amor. At any rate, if he'd gone to see Su Lezhan like this, he definitely wouldn't have gotten a word out of her. Feidu lazily drawled, "Do you know the Fuyan Memorial Hall? The memorial hall at Fuyan um, Funeral Parlor?" Wondrel stared. "Isn't it a place to store cremated remains?" "Sushalan's ashes are there," said Feidu. Shu and Chao got them put away. Apparently some of her possessions from when she was alive are with the box of remains. I propose you and I go have a look. Perhaps we'll find something useful." Wondrel frowned thoughtfully. "Did Sulujan say something?" "How could that be? That little girl is beyond crafty. She wouldn't reveal a detail like that. It's my guess." This man, his resourcefulness is just very attractive. I'm sorry to say it like that. Um, said Feidu. "I was just thinking, faced with a group of weak and cowardly stalker clients, it wouldn't be easy to make them keep their mouths shut and maintain secrecy. Aside from satisfying their desires, at the very least you'd need to have a handle on them. The place where you kept that handle would have had to be very carefully chosen. The best place would be like a bank's safety deposit box, with security cameras everywhere and someone keeping watch 4 hours a day. At the same time, it would have to be safe, not at all under your own name, unlike a bank, where the police would easily turn it up as soon as they started investigating. If it were me, I'd think an ash storage locker was a fairly ideal place." That is smart. I am like sliding off the bed right now. Hold on. Um, Cute date idea. Go looking at some ashes together. Yeah, we love it. You know, the morbid curiosity in us all. And this is like the second funeral related date that they've had now. Um, Fuyan Memorial Hall must be very strictly managed. Only the relatives who handle the intermittent procedures can swipe in, then have a staff member lead them inside. The card holders have to make an appointment to come for a morning visit. It's not like a cemetery. The management of some cemeteries is so lax that anyone can get in and wander around. Why does that feel like he's specifically being like, the way you did to my mom's grave? Lo and Joe, dot dot dot. They hadn't found a handle on others, but his own handle had been left along with the offering of a little white flower in the cemetery. "I don't mean anything by it." Feidu spread his hands and smiled. "Otherwise, since Shu and Chao was handling sorry, Su Shaolan's funeral arrangements, why didn't he buy her a grave? I suppose Shu and Chao would be able to get the money. Well, how about it? Might I trouble Captain Moore to act as a driver?" It really is a date, isn't it? An hour later, Lo and Joe stopped the car at the doors of a funeral parlor in the suburbs. There were some parked hearses scattered around. The place backed on a mountain, peaceful and secluded. The whole funeral parlor was shrouded in the mountain shadow, which was very dark. Only there was a chimney spouting a white stream towards the sky, the product of a cremation. Half crippled, Feidu looked at it and pushed the door with one hand, but found the driver hadn't unlocked the car yet. Fairy knocked lightly on the door to remind Lo and Joe, then heard him suddenly speak, asking, "What did you mean by that last night?" We're getting into this now? I mean, I'm here for it, but also now? Sure, okay, why not? At first, Fairy stared. Oh, wait, hold on, sorry. Chapter 54, Humbert, 21. Sorry about that. At first, Fairy stared. Then he leaned back, seeming very careless. Understanding, but feigning not to, he asked, "Hmm?" There was a great deal of the playboy in that lean. The corners of his lips were ready to smile, but not smiling, and his head was tilted as he looked at Law and Joel. He asked, clearly knowing the answer, "What did I do last night?" Law and Joel, ... He found he was dismayingly based. He was far more accustomed to Feydeau with the words "asking for a beating" stuck to his forehead than this strange, ambiguous manner of his. When the two of them were alone, if either showed signs of getting flustered, the other would quickly take advantage of his weakness. Lowenjo's temporary silence made Feydeau mistakenly think that he couldn't get the words out. It awakened his interest, and he couldn't resist teasing Lowenjo some more. "Last night, I voluntarily sent some comfort to your good offices. Is Captain Law thinking of requesting another silk banner for me?" Saying so, he pressed a little closer to Lowenjo, his eyes giving off a varied light, radiating from the irises, distinctly spreading out, like a freeze frame of ripples. "What are you planning to write this time?" "I'm thinking—" "Pedro," Lowenjo suddenly said with a great show of propriety, "if you provoke me like that again, I'm going to think you have some unspeakable intentions towards me." Have you met Feidu? I don't think he's gonna leave those unspeakable intentions unspoken for very long. Just be careful what you wish for. Um, Feidu, ... Because of their unusual relationship, the majority of the time, Lo and Joel was deadly earnest in his presence. Let's just say it like that. As time went on, it had given Feidu the mistaken impression that this person had shame. Mm-hmm. After a pause, Feidu executed a retreat at the enemy's attack, turning to look out the window at the somber funeral parlor. "Captain Law, are you sure you want to discuss such an indecent subject with me in surroundings like these?" "Besides the indecent subject, I also have a decent one," said Lowenjaw. "Are you planning to become a hands-off leader in September and hand your vast wealth over to others to manage?" "Where did that come from?" Lowenjaw, I'm curious. These two cannot be chill around each other. It's great, very entertaining. Continue, lads. Love that. The banter, yes. "There's no need to worry about that. I have a reliable team," Feidu shrugged. "They don't even need to be all that reliable, just a little more reliable than me. Even though I'm stepping back from daily operations, the company's major policy decisions will still require my signature. I'll still have my controlling interest. Anyway, even if it all goes to pieces." Mm-hmm. ... The leftover flotsam and jetsam will still sell for more money than we lowly public servants will earn in a lifetime, including our pensions. Enough for several people for several lifetimes, right? Lorenzo cut short his ostentation. "Stop talking nonsense. When your dad had his accident, you were still in school. Though your studies were sloppy and brainless enough, why weren't you willing to trust that reliable team then? Sit back and collect your annual dividends like a well-behaved shareholder. Because then they would think they could just walk all over him, probably. Luanjo is like, stop flirting with me, child. Let's talk about your finances. Bad behavior. Luanjo will never miss a chance to give a lecture. Oh, I'm living for it though. But it's good to have like a responsible quote unquote wife if you're not responsible yourself, I guess. So I'm glad he found a responsible husband and then um where am I? Where am I? Where am I? Okay. Fedu looked up and met Lowenjo's eyes in the rearview mirror. His gaze was deep, with a frank and familiar severity. You didn't take on your dad's company for the money. You were investigating him, Lowenjo said positively. According to this inference, you applied to Yan Security Uni. Now, you applying to Yan Security Uni has now has the same aim. What is it for? Rather, who's it for? Maybe it's to hit on you, Fadu said without turning a hair. Perhaps my taste has suddenly changed, and I've started to salivate for Captain Law's type of, deadly serious dark horse charm. Not a single straightforward word ever came out of this bastard's mouth. It was all circles and obfuscation. He narrowed his eyes, his gaze sweeping invasively over Lowendo's straight nose bridge and the slightly sharp lips, seeming ready to kiss him at any moment. Sure, just drop that on us, why don't you? With a trace of a nasal drawl, he gently asked, how do you know my studies were sloppy, Captain Law? Aside from secretly sending gifts, were you also concerned about my report cards? Law and Jaw, dot dot dot. Guys, I can't deal. He let out a breath through his nose, unlocking the car, and under the attentive, ambiguous gaze of this bit of goods, without any warning, he reached out and grabbed the collar of President Bay's thoughtfully arranged shirt, spoiling his large-tailed wolf's posture. Okay. Yeah, I'm fine, I'm fine. Someone has to force him to eat his veggies and to stop chugging wine. Oh, goodness. First, Lowenjo said sternly, my good looks have always received wide social approval from the masses. They belong to a classic, timeless style of male beauty. If you think that I'm a dark horse, that only goes to show that you haven't studied enough and are ignorant and ill-informed. Second, his gaze swept over Fedu's arm in its cast, looking like the sight was a little too tragic to behold. Darling, it's been a long time since I've seen anyone bold enough to talk as big as you do. You want to hit on me in your condition? You'd be better off hitting the milk and building up some calcium first, President Faye. No, why is this banter making me so happy? Gosh, let's all have his self-esteem. Yes, we can only wish. We'll just appreciate it from afar. Then he pointed to the corridor and said to Fedu, "Get out." President Fei had been invariably victorious in all forms of flirtation. Meeting for the first time with such a rude rebuff, he felt it was very novel. Shooed out of the car by Lo Wenjo in his disabled state, he watched Lo Wenjo's back with a look that said he was itching to have a go. But for the moment he laid down his arms, closed his mouth, and followed him to the memorial hall. The memorial hall's atmosphere was harsh, and the cooling system installed inside was perhaps not central air, but a refrigeration unit. As soon as the doors opened, a dense chill came rolling out. Some staff members verified Lo Wenjo's ID with unusual suspicion, not understanding why the police would want to come investigate a box of remains. "What would you like to see?" said the Memorial Hall's manager as he swiped his car and led them in. "We haven't broken any laws, even if we're being haunted. Since when has the scope of business of our people's wait, I'm talking absolute nonsense. Let's try this again. We haven't broken any laws, even if we're being haunted. Since when has the scope of business of our people's public security been so wide?" Lo Wenjo was in fact only calm on the surface, having just eaten a certain person's full broadside of harassment. Those last husky words were still going around and around beside his ear, making his heart flutter. Not him being distracted on the job, oh my goodness. All he wanted was to make the entire world shut up. Therefore, he irritably responded, "What if someone's planted a bomb in the wall of remains?" The storage room's manager gave him a shocked look, evidently taking Lo Wenjo for a novel type of psychopath. The storage area covered the surface of an entire wall, one small square after another, reaching from the very bottom all the way to the ceiling. Su Shaolan was in a corner, in a tiny crystal frame. "Area C 106, Su Shaolan." The manager checked the name. "That's her. Her daughter and fiancé put her there. Ask if you need anything. I'll withdraw now and be back in 20 minutes. Then he put his palms together, made a little bow towards Su Shaolan's photograph, and withdrew. Lo Wenjo batted away Feidu's hand on its way to pick up Su Shaolan's photograph. He took a pair of gloves from his pocket and checked whether the crystal frame had a double layer. Seeing there was nothing out of the ordinary, he passed it to Feidu and went to go through the burial goods beside the box of ashes. "The photograph is very interesting," said Feidu. "Too interesting," Lo Wenjo said as he went through the stuff. "It's exactly the same one as in our bureau's file room from 20 years ago. The space inside the little square where the box of ashes was interred wasn't big. It was clear at a glance what the family had put there. Aside from the frame, Lo Wenjo pulled out an old dress, methyl cigarettes, lipstick, and other things a woman would carry on her. It seemed like conventional buried goods, all without any value. So-called commemoration of the deceased is in fact all a rite for the living. At the memorial ceremony, the photograph that gets set out often shows the image of the deceased as they lived in the imagination of their friends and relatives. If these were people who associated often with the deceased, it'll often be a recent photograph. If they were more distant friends and relatives who didn't have many opportunities to see the deceased, it will be a photograph with commemorative significance. Besides that, some of the dead have comparatively strong self-awareness. After they pass, their friends and family will honor their last wish and choose the photograph they're most satisfied with, generally showing the deceased's greatest accomplishments in life. These are the usual circumstances. Feidu tapped lightly on the crystal frame, so the most worthwhile moment in Su Shaolan's life was when she was 12 or 13. And after that, in a certain person's eyes, was she tantamount to already dead? It's a good question. And I'm also thinking that if she indeed had a hand in framing the guy that was murdered by Guo Heng, that could, in her eyes, be seen as her greatest achievements, hence why they chose that, like if we're going by his same logic. Um, where were we? Okay. I mean, can you blame him? Absolutely not. Poor man, he's literally like, I'm too tired for this. You will have a bomb here if you don't let me do my job. Yeah, Captain Lua doesn't get paid enough for all this. What's getting crushed on by a traumatized twink does to a man. Oh my word, guys, your comments are killing me. I can't. Um, Lowenjo was just checking whether there was any place he'd overlooked. He hadn't spoken yet when his phone suddenly rang. The abrupt sound of a five-ring song vibrated back and forth inside a torturous storage room. The echoes going up and down produced a perfect horror movie effect. Lorenzo himself felt his flesh crawl. The manager who'd said he was withdrawing seamlessly appeared, sticking his head in, and said darkly, "Turn off the sound, officer. You have to be responsible in public places. You're disturbing people's rest like this." "My good dogger," Lowenjo said murderously. "If I weren't responsible, you'd definitely be in the ground by now." He's fed up, and I'm living for it. Okay, I'm sorry. The manager didn't dare to attempt reasoning with a barbarian. He retracted his head at once. Amidst the ill wind, Lowenjo, his face greenish, picked up the phone. "Taran, what have you found?" "The estate from back then is still here." Under the scorching sun, Taran pulled at his uniform collar. While making his phone call, he strode into the shade of a tree to get out of the heat, ceaselessly fanning himself with the photocopied old map. "I'm about to burn up." This estate is called the Sunward Estate, among the earliest commercial housing batch from over 20 years ago, high quality by the standards of the time. The old uncles playing chess around here say when Jinshu was still here, many students from rich families rented apartments there. That's very interesting. Is it possible that Wu Guangchun saw something from his apartment that he owned in that place? Um, oh my goodness, you have to listen to the five main song. It's so, I don't know, from a certain time and place, definitely something that would be ordered blasted in a sanatorium. Interesting, okay. Um, what about the surrounding wall? Lowenjo asked. According to what Guoheng said, he looked through the fretwork on the wall and could see Wu Guangchun's house. Can you determine approximately where it is? This place has been rebuilt so its own mother wouldn't know it. You sure know how to make things difficult for a person, boss. Gasping, Taran very improperly wiped the sweat from his forehead on his sleeve. Not far off, he saw his colleagues, dripping sweat like rain, beckoning to him. They had invited over a few surveyors from a nearby construction site. Following the Sunward Estate's foundations and the proportions on the old map, they were drawing the traces from back then on the wholly altered surface. The road had widened more than threefold, Wugongchun's house had been leveled by it. Luckily, the streets were deserted in the midsummer afternoon. Two policemen, each holding up a wooden staff level, stood a meter and a half apart in the road, restoring the main door of Wugongchun's house. Taran followed the thickly weeded perimeter wall of the sunward estate for a span, then said to Law and Jaw, I think the place must be between Building 7 and Building 8. According to Guohong's description, the place was just facing a corner, and you could spy on Wugong Chen's house from some dozen meters off. This is a hard place to find. Wenjaw, the original building's bicycle shed is here. The path isn't wide enough for a person. I had to turn sideways when I just came in. Back then, Shu and Chao took Guocheng through very familiarly. How do you suppose he found the way? That's what I'm wondering as well. He'd just spoken when a mass mailed message arrived on both their phones. It was Lang Chao. Lang Chao had gone to Jinshu Middle School to go through the old files the school had preserved. She'd found the contact address recorded for Shu and Chao during her junior middle school. Sunwood Estate, Building 8, Unit 3, Apartment 201. I don't know why I'm celebrating as if I'm some kind of genius, because it's freaking obvious, and I shouldn't even be happy about it, but I am. Okay. No, stop. Holding his phone, Taran turned to look at the old buildings with their mottled outer walls, then quickly came out through the small crevice, turned and ran up to the second floor of Building 8. The window in the corridor, open year-round, had rusted in place. It was covered in a layer of year-round greasy dirt built up over time. It faced in the same direction as the window of the master bedroom in 201. Taran opened his eyes wide and pressed close to look. Out the window, he saw his two colleagues holding staff levels, some meters behind them. Some thrones had been arranged to represent the basement of Wugong Chun's house. Old houses' basements had often been rented out separately, so many of them were sealed off and had windows. There would be a railing around the house, with flower beds around the railing, to protect against people falling in, and also to prevent people from spying. 20 years ago, this city hadn't been so grandiose. Past 9 o'clock at night, the streets would be deserted. There hadn't been so many night owls. Certain people who could only exist in the shadows would cautiously scope out the surroundings, determine that all was still in the deep night, then peel off their painted faces and take out their pitch black bones and desires, letting themselves go to their heart's content in basements that wouldn't see the light of day. Ugh. Would there have been a pair of eyes watching from on high then, able to see past the flower beds, glimpse everything from the seemingly fated point of view? Covered in mingled sweat and goose flesh, Taran dashed to Building 8's committee office and smacked his work ID on the table in front of the staff member. Could I trouble you to have a look for me who the owner of apartment 201 in Unit 3... who is the owner of apartment 201 in Unit 3? Has it changed hands in the last few years? 201? Staff member flipped through the records. It hasn't. It's still the original owner. Ding ding ding. Taran panted twice. Surname Shu? Not Shu. Surname Sun. An elderly couple. The staff member turned to the old building's manager to verify. Right, Georgia? Right. They're getting on in years. Have a daughter, I think. I think the daughter's in her 40s. The middle-aged woman poured Taran a cup of water. Taran forced himself to thank her. He couldn't help but feeling a little disappointed. In the corridor just now, he'd had a feeling coming out of nowhere, as if there was something on the other side of the wall in 201. It turned out that his nerves were just oversensitive. Or, and I'm just speculating, my good sir, but maybe that is the guy's mother? Maybe. Maybe I'm just trying to make this work when it's not working. Taran was about to take his leave when a middle-aged woman who poured him water said, "The daughter is very capable, settled down abroad. Some years ago she brought her parents over to live with her. I talked with the family's uncle back then. He said they were planning to sell the apartment before leaving. What happened then? Maybe they didn't find a suitable buyer or something. I see the ownership was never transferred, although maybe it's been rented out. The water and electricity fees have always been paid." At this point, Georgia suddenly thought of something, and her words came to a halt. She exchanged an embarrassed look with her colleague. Taran stared. "Georgia, do you know who the tenant is?" Georgia gave a ha, her gaze very unnaturally flickering down. "I don't know. I haven't run into them. They all buy their own water and electricity now. The owners don't come to us if they don't have any problems." Taran's eyes turned to the eliminate safety hazard, crack down on overcrowded rentals poster on the wall of the committee office, and deliberately asked, "Wait a minute. You wouldn't have illegal overcrowded rentals here, would you?" What a way to get them to cooperate. The two staff members' faces altered simultaneously. Georgia hurriedly defended herself. No, that family's luck hasn't been too good. The tenants keep changing. It's not an illegal rental. It's absolutely... Terence stood up at once. "Give me the keys." Deceitful property management companies tacitly accepted privately set up illegal rentals. But were the people coming and going in but were the people coming and going into a one really an illegal rental? At this time, Law and Joe had already completed his raid on Susha Lang's house and come empty. He turned hopelessly to Fei. "President Fei, you can be unreliable sometimes too." Leaning on the wall of the remains without a trace of superstitious taboo, Fei said, "Why don't you check the last place before determining whether I'm reliable or not?" Saying so, he picked up the box of Sushalan's ashes. It was tightly wrapped in 2 layers of silk. Like removing a lover's clothing. Oh my word, this description. His fingers moved over it lightly, and the silk eagerly slipped off, revealing the square wooden box within. Law and Jaw. ... And that is where I'm gonna have to stop it for today, which sucks. Um, Taran searching for an excuse to investigate. Reliable, there is really no evidence in the crematorium. Okay, so that is the end of today's stream. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm really excited to be back with this. Looking at how we've made progress so far, I'm thinking we might go on for more, like one more stream than I was expecting. So I was thinking we'd be done with volume 2 by the end of this week. But now it's kind of seeming like we might only be done on Tuesday, next Tuesday. But yeah, so regardless, we'll be back on Thursday, same time, 9 p.m. my time, 7 p.m. GMT. And yeah, I'm just excited to be back for a bit. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys again next time. This is Jean. Thanks, guys.